Hi, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. So, I loved your EP for its honesty and rawness about everything that so many people go through, but it's hard to talk about. Especially feelings surrounding grief. I'm sorry about the loss of your friend Jill. That must have been very hard for you.
Thank you.
So what made you want to write about her on this record and sort of like release those emotions?
Well, I was putting together the record. I was actually in sober living at the time when I was starting to think about what songs I would want to be in a body of work. And that's where I met her, was in sober living. So as I got to know her, it was the music that she would turn on in the car, and her perspective on confidence and sexuality and who she was as a person. I could feel it starting to rub off into my music before she'd even passed. And in September, when she had relapsed and was struggling, that's when I started to write Daddy's Girl. And it just felt from head to toe, she had touched so many elements and been such a muse for me that, I was excited to show her what had come out of her battle when she had recovered from it, but that didn't happen. But it still felt so when she did die, it was such an automatic response to dedicate the purpose to her and really to memorialize her and honor her, and in that way it was just a no-brainer. Sorry.
It's okay. Your dog is adorable.
So yeah, Hollywood Starlet, that was kind of a take on something. So I wrote it about a different song that I don't know if I should say, but I written about this song that was by a band that me and her both just had been to a bunch of concerts and turned them on the TV, and I was actually friends with one of the guys in the band and had kind of had a fling years ago. So I took the song that he wrote and thought, what if it was about me? Jill and I used to joke, what if this is about you? And so that was another way that she really shone through, because I was took her confidence and made Hollywood Starlet a response to his track. And without her, I don't think that would have been something that ever even occurred to me. So yeah, I think she was just so embedded throughout the process, and I think that she still will be. I'd love to write about happier memories with her, but I'm just very raw, and I just wrote the pain of losing her in that moment.
Right, yeah, and that could be felt throughout the album, especially on No Money and No Friends, where you sort of write about your own depression and substance abuse issues. So was that something that you also wanted to be very open about? What was your reasoning, I guess, for wanting to be so personal about your own journey?
I found that releasing songs that are so intimate to me is something that really nobody else can do. And the feedback that I get in my direct messages is really touching, and it leads to really deep personal conversations and meaningful connections. And I don't think I would have that if I wasn't so vulnerable in my music. And sometimes it's stuff that I can't really say it out loud. I'm not saying this stuff in therapy. I'm going home and I'm writing a song. You know what I mean? It's just more productive for me to kind of sort through my feelings. And I had started No Money, No Friends a couple years ago. I was in active addiction. I woke up with a horrible hangover. My guitar was next to my bed. I just picked it up and I said, I wish I'd kissed my best friend, blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of fell out of my mouth. And then I left it in my notes app for a while until I was in sober living and kind of like had the opportunity to reflect on, you know, what it had been like before, and that's where the chorus came, like, I need to vent. So that's how it happened, and for me, I'm a lot less shy when it's being sung and not said.
Is there a reason for that?
I could blame it on a million things. I really could. Like, I'm a big believer in astrology, and I'm a Scorpio, so like my outside stays ice cold, and the inside is where everything kind of goes on. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, like, I've also, like, kept up this, or for so many years I kept up, like, these walls with, you know, tattoos and, like, cigarettes and corsets and dark, you know what I mean? And it was kind of like my identity for so long was the person that, like, didn't open up. So my music was my safe space.
When did that start being a safe space? Because I know that you had struggled with depression during college, and it sort of turned into addiction, and music was sort of like your outlet for feelings that you couldn't express otherwise, especially when you were going through what you were going through. So
yeah, sidetrack.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool how much it feels like you know me pretty well.
I know.
Which is weird, but I think that's really cool of you to have, you know, not just, I don't know, to have personal questions. I think that's neat. Let's see. Yeah, college was brutal because I think all of this stuff that I'd been, like, stuffing down, like, came up when I was alone and, like, 3 hours away from home. So that's when I finished my first song that I, like, put the pen down and said, it's done. And that was Flawless. So I think once one song I, like, learned how to cap and, like, stopped being such a perfectionist, that's when they all kind of started flowing out. And I guess that's when you could say it really became an outlet and a safe space. But singing for me was always that. It was always, like, kind of an escape from whatever the heck was going on, and, like, finding songs that I did relate to was always, like, comforting too, because, you know, you're not alone, or, you know, someone else wrote your story. I think that's such a beautiful thing when we all find ourselves connecting to the same lyrics.
Absolutely. Sidetrack, you know, for me too. I just listened to the whole heap. He and I have had family members who struggle with mental health. I have struggled myself. And I just think it was really cool to just have you put your own story into words that I think just are so relatable to people who have been there, maybe people who haven't been there. They can step into your shoes and say, oh, this is how this feels. This is how I could maybe help a friend who's dealing with something similar.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't right now, like, struggle with mental health, especially after COVID? I think people that didn't identify as having any, you know, conflicts, like, some came up. And so, I mean, it is a subject that we've started to tap into as a society and as a community, but in the specific realm of, like, addiction and drugs, I still have a really big problem with how they are perceived. Like, it's going in the right direction, the conversation, but it's like, I feel like we can't talk about drugs without making them, like, look a little bit cool. Like, Euphoria is a great TV show and high quality, but goddamn, those kids are, like, sad, and the characters are sad, is what I mean. And I feel like if a teenager was watching that, they might be more likely to walk into a room at a party, see somebody cutting up a pill, and, like, try it because it's almost glamorous. Like, there's this edge of glamorous to it. And for me, it's really unsafe, I think, for a lot of people who don't know maybe their whole history or don't know that they've got an addictive tendency. And I just think that we need to hear the other side of the story more often. And Jill is I hate that she's an example. I wish the song didn't exist. But she was such a beautiful girl. Like, people didn't look at her and think, oh, she's addicted to something. You know what I mean? She was blonde. She was bubbly. She was just this magnet of light. And, like, that side of the story doesn't get told a lot. But, like, there's still a thing, like, that, you know, homeless people are, you know what I mean? There's still, like, people still picture an addict a certain way.
Right.
And it really could be anybody. So I thought that, like, that was an important... I just think it's an important discussion, and, like, I'm trying to get it heard more.
No, I agree with you on so many points that you made, especially that addicts are sort of portrayed a certain way, and yeah, people of color, black people, homeless people, it's just seen differently as opposed to when a white person is an addict. They're sort of, I think, given more sympathy than black people are, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, or like they're pictured going to a really expensive rehab.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like Malibu on the TV on the beach. So I just think that, I mean, we're all really united in this issue. Everybody knows someone, I think, who's struggling, and it's just like people feel like they can't say it out loud. And like releasing Jill was really hard because, like, I made sure it was okay with her family first, and that everyone was comfortable, and they all saw, you know, everything went through them first. But it was like scary to say like how she passed because of that. You know what I mean? And I think that I was really lucky that her family was so supportive of like my processing on a personal level, but also they were like really willing to use her story to like help change, you know, the perspective on it. And I think that was a really beautiful thing.
It's such a great point you brought up. Were you nervous about, I guess, how people outside of her family were going to react to how she actually died and what she was actually suffering from?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a light song. It's not a happy song. It's not like the way that any of us want to really remember her, I think. I think there's elements to the song that like capture how fantastic she was. But yeah, I mean, I was on the phone with her mom, and her mom did say, she's like, I don't know how many people know how she passed, and like it was scary for her too to like hear something so raw and know something so raw was going on the internet. But we both have gotten such beautiful feedback from Jill's friends and family, and I think it was important not to skip over like the hard truth and like the hard details and like the pain part, because it would have been easier to, you know, write like reflecting back on our time together, but humans need to have that like mourning period.
Yeah.
And that's what the song is, I think.
Oh, no, I agree with that. I think it's a beautiful way to remember your friend and what she went through, but also just not leave it there, right? But, like, shine a light on who she was. So what would you want people to know about Jill? Like, if you were explaining to them, like, who she was, like, what would you want them to remember about her?
Oh, there's so much that I wish more people could have experienced about her. Like, she kind of walked around without noticing the way that people followed her through room to room. You know what I mean? Like, she was just so attractive on, like, a different wavelength. Like, not looks too, but, like, spiritually. Like, she made people feel special in a way that, like, I still look through the videos of her, like, joking with people, and the look on their faces never crossed her mind. You know what I mean? Like, she had no idea the impact that she had on people. I would want people to know her laugh. I actually put it in the beginning of Daddy's Girl, because she had such, like, this adorable little twisted evil laugh that she had. But yeah, I'm going to keep sharing about her on my page. Like, she has one of those highlights with a bunch of memories, and I hope that people, like, feel inclined to explore, like, some of those details where they could get to know her on more of a personal level, because she was really just, like, this magical little creature. And when she would call herself stuff like that, she'd say, oh, I'm such a critter. I don't know why. I'd never heard the word like that before. But, like, she was such a magical little critter. And she was such, like, a beautiful... I don't know. She was the best friend that I always wanted. Like, she'd get in the car and nothing was ever awkward. And I was always scared. I'm still scared sometimes hanging out with people one-on-one. I'm like gonna be like doo-doo-doo. But she was just made people comfortable. She made people feel noticed. She didn't pass judgment on people that, you know, for no reason. She didn't pass judgment on people that were going through something. Like, she was very accepting, very loving, very forgiving, and it's just, it's hard to lose a gem like that. Like, I was really lucky to even know her, and that's what I remind myself, but God, it feels like a curse to lose her, and she would have touched more lives. So I'm hoping that, like, by keeping her in the vision and sharing about her, that she can still touch more lives.
Absolutely, I think that's totally possible. Switch gears a little bit. I know you also wrote about like a toxic relationship on the EP, and I feel like we've all been there with somebody before. So yeah, like what moment from that relationship made you say, okay, I have to like write about this right now?
That specific person actually has been a muse for me from the very first song. I could probably, out of the like 15 on the internet, there's probably like 9 are about him. Like the majority, there is just a lot of like beauty and pain kind of intertwined in that relationship, and we haven't even completely fallen out of touch. Like, he actually heard the EP and said, "Is this one about me?" I said, yeah, this one too. But yeah, I think sometimes like it was kind of like a twin flame situation or something. It definitely wasn't love, but it felt like it at the time. And I hate to put it like this, but within our like short relationship, there were so many moments that like I think the creativity that come out of it is pretty endless. It the toxicity part, like being somebody who has dealt with a lot of different kinds of pain, I've had to like practice being inspired by the opposite. Like, I'm so infatuated with pain. I'm so inspired by like really dark, like I'd rather write about the dark than the light, and I don't know necessarily why that is, and I'm practicing like setting more of a balance. But yeah, I think when you're going through stuff like addiction and depression, and you tend to have like a lot of blame almost, and you tend to get used to like the comfort of stuff that isn't normal, and so that's probably why I often find myself still reflecting on the bad rather than the good.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I feel like with it's okay. I feel like with depression and addiction, they're so intertwined, right? Like one could definitely lead to the other, and I think sometimes people have this idea about addiction that like you have to be a certain kind of person to fall into, and that's not necessarily true, you know?
No, not at all. I was a different kind of person. Yeah, nobody thought the me in high school was going to go through what me in college did. Like, I was like homecoming queen, straight A's, you know what I mean? And like it just is another like more proof that it really could happen. Like, nobody's immune to something like that.
Absolutely. One last question. So I remember you said you wanted to write about happier memories with Jill. So would this be like a follow-up to the EP, or are you still thinking about how you're going to do that?
I don't know if this EP will have necessarily a follow-up. I think what I want to start working on next would be like a full-length album. And I kind of want to return back to like my pop rock side instead of like this alternative rock side. Just because I do think it's so important to like, even when you're talking about shit like this, like it's still important to have fun and to make it like listenable. Like, I don't want my listeners to be put in a bad mood every time they stream something. Like, there are albums that I have to like be really careful about listening to because they're so powerful. And so I want to like return a little bit to the element where you can juggle the emotions and like feel good and feel bad. It's more of a roller coaster and less of just like a downward spiral. So yeah, I think I'll definitely include new songs about Jillian in further projects down the road. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was perfect that this EP came together the way that it did, because all of the songs fit so well and so nicely together, like theme-wise, genre-wise. They all kind of fit into this little pocket that it made it really easy to batch them all together. It really felt like I was telling like a story, but I want to, tell more. So.
Absolutely, and we're all looking forward to it. Thanks so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. That was fun.
Oh, no, it was. And you're helping so many people with your music, so I hope you continue to do that. It's really, like, cathartic.
Fingers crossed. But if I can help one person, that was what I wanted to do. So, like, a dozen is crazy to me.
I'm sure you've helped more than a dozen.
Baby steps, man.
Okay. Thanks so much for talking to me. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.